But joining me now in studio, a man who has been the bane of my life since around mid-August. Patricia Monaghan, before she left as station editor here, said, Ivan, back in 2016 with Chris Donoghue, do you remember him, the government press officer, on the breakfast show? We went through every one of the constituencies and made predictions and turned them into podcasts. In 2020 with Gavin Riley, and this time around, even more constituencies, even more TDs to assess, 174 to be elected. The political editor of the Bauer Group, both for Today FM and Newstalk and elsewhere, Sean Defoe, was charged with the job of minding me to produce a 2024 edition for the general election. It's called Calling It. And at the end of the day, there's no hiding place. It'll be up to 10 minutes for each constituency. You'll be able to access them on the Newstalk website. And Sean joins me now. And in fairness, Sean, so you have set the template for each of the constituencies by drawing up the runners and riders.
Yeah, so we've been putting together. Well, one thing I noticed by your intro, right, you've never kept a presenter beyond one season with you. So it doesn't bode very well for me over the next few weeks, I have to say. But I've been trying to put some sort of straps on it and going through all the constituencies into this big document that we have that we've been preparing over the last while, because there's loads of changes. I mean, there's loads of constituency changes, 14 extra TDs that are going to be elected, and significant redraws, particularly in places like Cork, your own backyard in Wexford as well, totally changed from where it was before. And I'm in that stage of adding in all those candidates that we know don't have a hope, but we still have to add in and talk about, you know. So it's an interesting time.
How many candidates do you think there'll be?
There's going to somewhere
about
600 to 700, I would have said. It was 700 last time.
Yeah, oh, right.
There's an awful lot. And with the extra few constituencies, you're adding on a couple. Like the Dublins will all have nearly 20 each.
Right. Because the rule of thumb, 43 times 12, I thought. And tonight, the Tipperary North Fianna Fáil convention has been held, and in Clare and Dublin West, Fine Gael, the National Executive, are still to make a decision on it. And then you'll have independents. I hear on yesterday's Hard Shoulder, Michael McDowell came out and said he's not standing.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. So tell us the formula that we need to assess in terms of data.
But there's tons to go into it. So you have to take what happened last time, obviously. Then the political currents that are going on at the minute, Sinn Féin's rise and fall, and all the scandals that have dogged them, and the uptick from Simon Harris in particular. That, to me, that's the biggest one that will overall we will look at, because I ask everybody that I'm meeting, how much is the Harris bounce worth? Because as we're going to get into in the constituencies, they have all these problems locally, but you have a national uplift. And I had someone in an opposition party compare him to a Bertie Ahern like figure, and if you take that, then they could have a very good day, and suddenly someone who has no hope gets in, a bit like last time when people went in and voted for Mary Lou rather than voting for the Sinn Féin candidate.
Just on that, I mean, in fairness, in my lifetime, Bertie has been the most successful. He got 3 consecutive wins. He got over 40% for Fianna Fáil. I mean, my first thing is, because I'm looking at elections, I first stood in 1981, and basically, and I'm analysing them since 07. And one of the interesting trends is that since 1970, Stuart Kenny actually told me this, there's only been one occasion that the total number of government TDs did not go down, and that was in 2002 when Fine Gael was wiped out in opposition. When you look across Europe, governments are being defeated. Is there not a situation with Harris that it could be a honeymoon and mightn't last? It's not like a decade of Bertie. I mean, like, how sure can they be? The last Sunday Business poll showed maybe it was levelling out at 22%. What's your assessment of that?
It's really hard to know. And like, there's two sort of bits of political anarchism, if you like, that we've always accepted. One, that a new leader gets a bounce. They always get a bounce for a while in the polls. And the other being, you should be well bedded in before you call a general election. And the two almost seem to run contrary to each other, don't they? That you almost outweight your bounce in the polls to then go. And Leo Varadkar saw that last time to his cost. So he could be hitting a sweet spot where there's just an uplift for him. The thing that makes me think that people are buying into the Harris stuff is when I talk to people who aren't involved in politics, and they always say one or two things. They say, God, geez, he's very busy. He's a very busy man. I hope he's not too wrecked.
The energy.
The energy is there. It's on social media the whole time. He's everywhere. Or else they just seem to kind of like him. You know, he has this appeal to people outside of politics.
I always said his biggest appeal is that his father, Bartley Harris, was a barman and now drives a taxi. So nothing grandiose about his mother is in SNA. So I think that makes him quite grounded. But I mean, he he spent he's never had a proper job other than this job. I mean, he went straight out. He dropped out of college and went into politics. Has been a huge his rise has been exocet. Now, the local elections feeds into this. I always think there's a recency bias. The centre held. Just give us a kind of few paragraphs on where we are after the local elections. You have poll toppers there, and I have a kind of golden rule, which will be broken. That if you couldn't make it to the local elections, how are you going to make it to the general election?
And it's very difficult when people are trying to spin you. Oh yeah, this candidate has a chance. Now, they were almost there in the locals. But at the same time, you look at last time out and we saw Johnny Mythen down your own way, got 400 odd votes in the local election, got 18,000 then in the general election turnaround. So it is possible and there are trends there. I mean, Sinn Fein had a terrible local elections for the second time in a row, which would tend to say to you incumbency is a big factor. And so that factors into my thinking in the Dáil then that maybe it is a bigger advantage than...
If a TD's working hard for any party, they'll hold on.
Exactly. But then you have the other thing where if you haven't seen the TD, I had a TD at my door the other day and I haven't seen them in 5 years. And that always sticks in the back of the head as well, I think, for people, that if you haven't seen them work and haven't seen them doing a tap and they're only looking for the vote, then every 5 years, that stays there.
One of the things I do as part of this, as well as looking at all the data, I meet all the parties and they're very good at bad-mouthing it. And two TDs, and I thought I was pretty on top of it. One in Kildare South and one in Cork Southwest. They're not living in the constituency.
Oh, I love that.
I was quite taken aback. You mean they're living in Galway? They're living in Dublin? And that can be very damaging to people.
It can. There's kind of two trends on that. One is absolutely they are not living in the constituency. People really don't like that. Or the other one that you get, or I've been getting when I speak to people, is that such and such is some relative of the candidate is a campaign manager for someone else. Or in Wicklow, that Mildred Fox's old team is working with Shay Cullen, the former Fine Gael councillor who's running as an independent. So all that gossip is great and feeds into it as well.
So what does success look like? So, in other words, if we were to actually post up the results after the 29th, and we'll be doing extensive count coverage as well on the Saturday and Sunday here on Newstalk. In terms of Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, right now, because I said after the local election, before the local election, I said if they got over 200, they'll consider it a good day. They both got 240 plus, which was a great day for them. Now, the turnout in that was 50%. It'll be 60-something%, I think, this time. And I think young people and very disadvantaged people didn't vote. And I think they're less likely to vote Fine Gael. What does success look like for the big parties?
So if you look at the big parties, I think anything above 40 is considered doing well, and 45 would be considered having a very good day. So you're talking 42 to 45 is where I did my calculations a few weeks ago, have Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil landing into at the minute based on the current polls.
Okay.
And I think that's a good day.
That's what success looks like.
That's what success looks like, because that gets the two of them together, thereabouts with a majority, which is going to be 88 in the new Dáil.
So they wouldn't need a partner if they got that. I think that's impossible from this perspective, that when you go through the constituencies with the voting transfer that it's not agreed, but will happen, that the last seat, Galway West or different areas, so say Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael get 3 out of 5.
Yeah.
It won't go to both of them. It'll either go Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil. So if you give 2 seats in that case to Fine Gael or to Fianna Fáil, it'll only be one for the other. So I don't think there's any prospect in my mind that they'll get an overall majority between them.
No, it's there. I think I can see them being knocking on the door. I think they'll still need a third partner, and I think even if they got a bare majority, they would want a third partner for someone to kick that third leg of the stool,
like they're kicking the Greens.
Exactly, like they're kicking the Greens. Someone there, but
don't
also
let
to
the
shore
door
up
hit
the
your
votes
arse on the way out.
But you look at. So you're saying like some of those Cork Southwest, for example. If you take that, Michael Collins is going to top the poll, and that Holly Cairns I think there's a good chance that she keeps the seat. The last seat is a straight shootout between Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil. Dunleary, the last seat is probably a shootout between Fianna Fáil and a second Fine Gael. Longford, Westmeath, Fine Gael are trying to unseat Joe Flaherty on that end of the constituency and take a Fine Gael seat. Kildare North, there's an extra one added in, and both Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil are looking for a second
Cork
there.
Northwest.
Cork Northwest,
there's
exactly.
a 3-seater. Each party's looking for 2.
And that constituency, the entire history of that constituency, it has always been Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil in some combination of 2 to 1, and they're now Fine Gael trying to take out the second Fianna Fáil.
So if we were having this discussion a year ago in relation to Sinn Fein, they were on 30-something%. They had left 12 seats behind them in the last election. They got the most votes, but they didn't get the most seats because they didn't run enough candidates. In several constituencies, they actually had 2 quotas, and they elected us. Now, after 12% halving their vote from 2020 in the local, what does success look like for Sinn Féin?
Holding as many as possible. The only possible gain I really see for Sinn Féin is in Waterford, where they have just a great ticket. Conor McGuinness out in Dungarvan had a really big vote. I think it was the only council they increased their council representative on, and they're perfectly balanced with Culnana in the city and him out in Dungarvan, and they're looking to take out the Green seat and take a second there, and that's a realistic possibility. They'll be thereabouts. I don't see any other constituency where they pick it up. So you look then at where they have 2 seats. Are they going to hold them? They've decided in most of those to run only 2 candidate strategies, where they would have been running 3 and maybe even 4 a year ago in Donegal and Louth, Cavan Monaghan, places like this, where they're probably helped out by Heather Humphreys stepping away. And then the rest is holding some of those tricky seats where you haven't had a TD who's a particularly hard-working local person. So Martin Brown is in danger down in Tipperary South.
I hear he may not stand.
He may not stand.
I
hadn't heard that.
only last night.
Well, that presents a big problem. Carlo Kilkenny.
One where they've 2, an interesting one, is Dublin Midwest. Now, there's an extra seat, Mark Ward and Donal O'Brien, who's likely to top the poll. Do you think they will hold those 2?
Yes, I think they will. It'll be tight for the second seat, but I've bet against them a few times and wouldn't hold out on them a third time from actually managing the vote. They've got a really well-oiled machine out there. It won't be easy, but I can see them holding to.
Now, in my discussions, I found it's very interesting what they call the progressive vote. These are people, Labour, Greens, Soc Dems. And this is how Eoin O'Riordan, he wasn't in the top part of the first count, but they will transfer to each other. So for each of those, soft left, Labour, Soc Dems, Green, they're harmonious together, but they're also competing against. So I'm looking out for who's top of the pile. What would success look like relative to the number of TDs and retirements they have?
Well, it depends on who you ask. I spent a good bit of time with some Greens yesterday, right? And they said, you're going to laugh at this, but they said bad day is 6 seats, good day is, like great day, everything bounces right, is 18 seats, which I don't think there's a hope in hell of happening. But that's where the range that they're looking at. Labour are looking at something similar. I think if you said to Labour and the Soc Dems that they landed in the 10 to 12 range, they would be delighted with you. And if they get 8, they'll be okay, not great.
So Labour go in with 6?
Labour have 7, isn't it?
And
with the addition of 2 retirements. So they
Brendan Howland and Sean Sherlock.
And Sean Sherlock stepping away. Brendan Howland's seat he's been grooming George Lawler as a successor for years. He did very well in the by-election 2019. I think that's a hold for them. Sean Sherlock
just on that, I was speaking to Brendan because he's director of elections. So I was saying, George will be fighting for the last seat with Cal Byrne or whatever. He said, no. He said, Ivan, you're completely wrong. And it was quite funny because he said, oh no, he'll get the second seat. He's the only candidate in Wexford Town. So I texted him about another candidate in Leinster. And he said, so I thought maybe, he thinks all his ponies are going to win. He said, no chance.
All right.
so that increased his credibility in my mind. The other one you were talking about.
The other one that's fascinating for Labour is Cork North Central, because this is a totally redrawn constituency. It's why Sean Sherlock retired. Mallow, which was always his base, went from Cork East into North Central. They brought bits of Ballincollig into the constituency as well, and they gave it an extra seat. And Labour are running 2 young candidates, Owen Kenny in Mallow and John Marr in the city, both of whom got more than 2,000 votes in the locals. And they basically decided, let the 2 young guns scrap it out and see who comes out on top, with also a little bit of thinking on the redraw that Mallow might not be there in the future. They've got a big advantage in they've got 2 Social Democrats candidates and a Green who aren't great. They're not amazing candidates. They're all in the city, so you think they probably transfer to John Marr and push him ahead of the other one. The question then is, does Mallow transfer out of Mallow and get him elected? But they have a very good chance of keeping the 5th seat there.
So independents, in total, there's a whole spectrum of independents. In total, what would you think?
Pushing 30, maybe more than 30 seats.
Okay. So just a few, for people who dip in and out of this on the count night and all the rest of it, could you point out some bellweathers? So in other words, Simon Harris, a good day, a bad day. What sort of bellweathers do you see?
So I think good day, you're looking at 2 in Longford Westmeath. We've already mentioned that. Waterford should be a win for them. They're looking at easy wins that they left behind them last time. So Tipperary South, they're looking at Waterford as well. Cork South West one, they feel that they should. Sort of good old heartland Fine Gael back in the past. And then Kerry has proven to be difficult, but is a 5-seater. If they're having a good day, they should hold that. And a really good day is a win in Donegal. I mean, Donegal is difficult for them. There's no 2 ways around that.
Okay, Fianna Fáil defied predictions, did poorly in the commuter belt last time, losing seats. What are the bellwethers for Fianna Fáil?
Tip North now becomes one. Jackie Cahill would have been guaranteed a seat. It was one of the first ones we were going to do. Now less sure. Clare, can they take two? Can Timmy Dooley come back and get into the Dáil? Kildare South, can they take one? The Count Corda is staying. That makes that a 3-seater. Fiona O'Loughlin, can she come back in? Limerick City as well. I mean, is there a chance that they could take the Brian Ledden seat there? The 4th seat, I think, is open. And then Louth, you would look at as another potential bellwether for them. They've no seat there out of 5.
So when will the calling at 43 be starting to go up?
So we are waiting. Well, we were kind of been in flux, haven't we? Waiting for the actual date to be called. I think it's going to be called the election next Thursday morning. After yesterday they agreed the business of the Dáil. We're going to start recording on Friday. So you're going to get a first episode from us next Thursday, and then the first of the constituencies landing Friday and over the weekend.
God help us. Sean Defoe, you are going to be one busy man because you're going to have to the day job of following leaders' tours, manifestos and everything. It's all going to kick off this day next week in terms of the actual campaigning. Thank you so much, and I look forward to working with you. Like the funny story about Sean Defoe, I work on Saturdays and Sundays, and I sent her the I don't have my laptop at the weekends. I thought that as a new generation.
Oh, you're hanging me out to dry there. But you know, the hardest thing we work with you, right? I have to talk to these TDs and ring them. And I ring them and I say, hey, I'm doing this podcast with Ivan Yates. And they go, for God's sake. And I get a 5-10 minute diatribe about how you got it wrong the last time before it starts.
All right, I look forward to it. He's working hard. Now, time for this.